Pudge is all about meat hook, right? It's like the spell that you pick him for. It's endlessly fun, it's endlessly useful, it's endlessly complex, and it's not something that we're going to be talking about today. But, I mean, we will talk about why we won't talk about it. Before that, though, we need to talk about the power pyramid. The power pyramid is a beautiful thing. On the surface, it could say one thing, but if you were to dig deeper, it might just end up saying the exact opposite. Here, this is what I mean. According to TOW2P, the biggest counter to Pudge in the entire game is Chen. And for good reason. I mean, Chen is a hero who is consistently surrounded by creeps, who is consistently in the backlines, who is consistently able to burst heal teammates who are being dismembered. Chen counters Pudge. Until you look a little deeper and ask, well, if Chen hard counters Pudge because of meat hook, and Pudge is all about his meat hook, what happens if I just don't get meat hook? And then it gets interesting. That's right, son, hold on to your heads because we are going to be mementoing the hell out of this episode. We are going to be taking a page out of Pulp Fiction and jumping all around every segment, every timeline, every word, all in service of piecing together exactly what Pudge is all about by the end. Pudge gets meat hook. He maxes meat hook. He's done it for every year he's been around, except right here, right now, because this, dear viewer, is our skill build. You'll notice right away that we only get one value point in meat hook and then we just leave it be. With the changes to meat hook over the years, topped off by update 718 in which meat hook's max distance was set to 1300 at every level, now all of a sudden a meat hook with only one value point is perfectly viable. It sounds blasphemous, but if you can accept this one bizarre statement, all of a sudden a whole flurry of doors open up in front of us. Here we go again. I mean, this just ripples on down. We're in the item build now. With less of a dependency on meat hook, all of a sudden there's absolutely no need to focus primarily on items that help with meat hook. We don't need to rush blink dagger or force stuff. We don't need to stock up on ways to closer guarantee that we'll end up landing a meat hook. And as such, we end up having the freedom to buy items that assist with landing our comparatively extremely reliable spells beyond hook. Without the focus on meat hook, we lose the dependency on lots and lots and lots of mana. We don't really need Soul Ring or Wand or Arcane Boots or Ether Lens. We've been unshackled from these very old and unchanging skill builds and item builds of yore. Now we can prioritize other aspects, things that accentuate Rot and Flesh Heap and Dismember. And speaking of all of these abilities, let's talk about them. Whoa, we're back in this section now. In our skill build, the one displayed right behind me, you can see that at level 1 and at level 2, we get Flesh Heap and Rot, respectively. These can be mixed and matched depending on your circumstances naturally. Most level 1 and 2 spells can be shuffled around with not too much resistance, although I will say, in Pudge's case, getting the wrong one at level 1 might actually make it impossibly hard to get to level 2 afterwards. No pressure, right? But don't worry, it's pretty difficult to accidentally make the wrong choice. Even with no prior knowledge, you could do it right now and have a 50-50 shot of being fine, right? Because I mean, it's just two options. But to boost that up to a clean 100% shot, it's basically this. Rot gives you 30 magical DPS with which to guarantee last hits and slow enemies that dare get within your stink bubble. With a range of 250, it's pretty easy to rot all over any melee hero, bar Mars and Monkey King, and with the zero cast animation it's easily switched on and off mid-swing for a bit of bonus damage. But, as we all know, Rot also has the downside of damaging Pudge too. A spell that damages Pudge is not a good first pickup when you're on a lane where you're already 99% dead, brought down to 1% health by the fact that the enemy mid laner is a level 1 behemoth. Lina, Exort Invoker, Tinker, Clinks, all of these heroes that rock up on lane and just start clicking you down are not compatible with a spell that also hurts you as well. So in these instances we go Flesh Heap. Flesh Heap is a 5 HP regen bonus, the 70% equivalent of a Tango's 7 HP regen, but a Tango's regen only lasts for 16 seconds, only activates when consuming a tree, and costs an infinite percent more, at 90 gold versus literally 0 gold. Flesh Heap gives 5 HP at level 1. You know how anti-mages and specters and bristlebacks and tiposaurs and axes and all of those other heroes desperately push for the ability to collect enough gold to buy Ring of Health? They do that in order to get to a point where they can passively out-regen any harass that comes their way. And ultimately this wins their lane. Yeah, funny that, because Ring of Health, which is 850 gold, gives 6 HP regen. 850 gold separates 5 HP and 6 HP, and now you might be getting why Flesh Heap's all of a sudden so good. So with that out of the way, it's time to return to So, okay, we're in agreement. We're both coming at Pudge as if he didn't even have a spell called Meat Hook. If we turn the priority over to Rot, or perhaps Dismember, or even a combination of the two, what heroes poke out as easily counterable? What heroes perhaps show up on the completely polar opposite side of the pyramid than where they were when we focused on Meat Hook? Well, let's see. First off, it's important to remember that we're still Pudge, we're still the same hero, and apart from Meat Hook counters, we still suffer from the same weaknesses. We're tanky, but we're low armor, at least for now, and with the Flesh Heap change, we're susceptible to percent-based damage, pure damage, loads and loads of magical damage. All of these elements combine to leave us sort of countered by a few of the same classic ones that Pudge has always been countered by, for decades now. Kinda. Pudge was first added to the game Defense of the Ancients on the 30th of April 2004. Pudge was first added to the game Defense of the Ancients on the 30th of April 2004. Back then, I was only 58 years old. But also back then, he was known as the Butcher and had spells like Stitch, which raised units from the dead for 30 seconds, Dawn of the Dead, which makes it ironic that Pudge was also a remake, Necrogenesis, and Carry On Flies. No hook, no rot. He was literally just a different hero. But after that, he was reworked into Pudge 2.0, and from that point on, he countered, and was countered by, the same sorts of heroes. At the top of the list, as always, are heroes like Timbersaw, heroes like Death Prophet, and heroes like Io. So let me elaborate. Regardless of how you play Pudge or where you lane him, you're going to run into pretty much the exact same crutch every time. While we may get away with it by not focusing on Hook and focusing more on Rot, I don't think it would ever really be possible to forego Dismember. Dismember is a staple of Pudge's impact as a hero, and so anything and everything that can counter Dismember will counter Pudge. The three examples given earlier do exactly that in three different but equally frustrating ways. Timbersaw, as a hero, is very hard to pin down. Normally that wouldn't really be a problem because we're not really needing to go all in on hooking him, but what is a problem is that Timbersaw has the ability to deal percent-based damage, pure damage, and steal primary attributes. Pudge's primary attribute is obviously Strength, which is the exact stat that influences Dismember's damage and heal. Also with Rot dealing a very static amount of damage, 155 magical damage per second at max with the talent, the amount that it damages as a percentage of your total HP goes wildly up as your max HP goes down. Right? If they took away so much of your strength that you were left with just 150 health and no magic resistance, activating Rot for 1 second would kill you. So anything that reduces total HP, like Timbersaw can, is very bad news. The worst news is that Timbersaw's percent-based damage, pure damage, and primary attribute stealing all comes from the exact same spell, Whirling Death. But Timbersaw also has another thing that beats Pudge, a spell that keeps damaging even when Timbersaw is stunned, Chakram. And another hero who has something like that, but even more so, is Death Prophet. Death Prophet counters Pudge in the exact same way she counters anyone who decides, you know what, I should stand in melee range of this girl while all of her thousands of ghosts fly around ripping into me freely. Unfortunately, I don't think you'll find that Dismember's heal per second can help you against the overwhelming damage that Exorcism does. Also, funnily enough, Death Prophet's Spirit Siphon actually has the potential to lifesteal away the exact same amount of damage that Dismember itself takes away from Death Prophet. So by the end of both spells' durations, you're at this point where Pudge and Death Prophet are looking right at each other and realizing, oh, we're exactly the same health as when we first started. The final hero counter is not really a hero counter, and more of a concept of a hero counter. I said Io earlier, but no one really plays Io. Some people won't even really know what Io does in some cases. So rather than imagining that this is a counter very specifically about Io, picture in your mind something more like a concept. Really, in the long run, I'd hope that you're doing that with all of these videos. Obviously, not only Death Prophet and Timbersaw have spells that do what I mentioned. They're not the only heroes who counter Pudge. I use them less as a fish and more as a concept of how to fish, if you get me. The concepts that make up all three of these heroes also apply to other heroes, and even aspects that I specifically relate to Pudge also end up working with other heroes. Bane has a massive stunning channel, so Bane would be countered by Death Prophet too. Centaur Warrunner has strength-based damage, so Timbersaw would counter him. And Pudge is completely single target, So Io counters him. Pudge's whole thing is the ability to lock down and do an immense amount of damage on one hero, upwards of 5,000 if the stars align, but Pudge is countered by anything that can go in between him and his meal. Io is the personification of that, right? I mean, Io has tether, Io can heal the dismembered target, Io also has overcharge, Io can for 8 seconds mitigate the damage Pudge deals to that target, Io can freely relocate out and save his target from Pudge's stun, and there's nothing Pudge can really do about it other than hooking Io. And this sort of thing kind of ripples out to anyone with similar abilities. Any hero with a stun can disrupt Pudge, any hero with a silence, any hero that can heal or hide Pudge's target. There are so many ways to save a hero from dismember. But therein lies the fun, because within that truth we can derive hours and hours of really joyous entertainment with all of these elements against a successful dismember. If we plan around it and manage to get one off, that dismember will taste very good. But in the second tier, you've got your classics like Lifestealer, on account of him just loving to chow down on Pudge's man meat, whatever that means. Also in that tier are all the heroes that lower armor, with Pudge being a 0 armor legend at level 1, and having barely any agility gain beyond that. It's usually very easy for heroes like TA, Shadow Fiend, and Slider to come in and melt you. Beyond Pudge's fleshy, rotten, tanky exterior, there's a rich and gooey center. If a hero can bypass his very high strength gain and health, he's surprisingly squishy. And then third are the classics that would have been first had we focused on Meat Hook. They're that aforementioned Chen, and Puck, and Broodmother and Phantom Lancer, all of these hard to pin down, hard to hit, slippery eels. Hey man, I said Meat Hook isn't the focus of our build. I mean, it still exists, we're still getting levels in it after everything else. It's just that we don't focus on it too much. It's like the idea that if you train to swing a sword right-handed day in and day out because that's your main hand, and then one day decide to never let your right hand near a sword, and from that point on only ever train with your non-dominant left hand, potentially weaker hand, well, when the day finally comes that you're attacked by a masked assailant, you have double the prowess on account of being proficient with both hands. And then I guess you just get shot anyway because it's not the 1400s and people don't really fight with sharp sticks anymore.